This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide. A warehouse where a parchment lampshade, an automobile tire, a canvas tarpaulin, an umbrella, all are touched by murder. And here's a dictionary. It's a familiar object. French into English, English into French. Every high school student knows what these books are like. Word here, phrase there, merci, thank you, merci. And of course, a use common to most young men in countries not their own.
Je t'aime. Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What does that mean?
In the little book, one moment, je t'aime, I love you.
Well, today the dictionary can be seen in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Here we are in the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Not a bad present place, but it's interesting. Yes, here lies death. The people who conceived this place must have wished to raise a memorial to death. And here, collected under one roof, are the mementos of the murder from over 100 years. Here's a dart, a feathered dart, made for pleasure, for laughter and friendly tavern. This tiny metal tip was dipped in cyanide. A twist of a wrist, flick of an elbow. The dartboard missed. The spectator was scratched. It was an accident. An accident? No, it was murder. Ah, here we are, the dictionary. You want the English for a French word? It is, or the French for a word in English. It's here also. Nice idea. All in one book. Great convenience. Particularly for Jules Gamache, who had a bit of trouble expressing himself to Betty Brown on the beach in southern France. One warm and sunny afternoon.
Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What's that mean?
In the little book, one moment, je t'aime, oui, I love you.
Right, Jules. And me, a married woman?
It was. Love out of the dictionary in the summer in southern France. Of course, this was in 1923. That date's important simply because radio and broadcasting were just beginning. And Jules Gamache was something of an electrical engineer. In fact, he was the only man in a little French seaside town who was able to bring music out of the air.
Le galène, how you say in anglais? Ah, de cat's whisker. So. Maintenant, mes chéris, écoutez.
Oh, Jules. But there really is music in these funny rubber earmuffs.
Huh?
Why, Jules, well, you are bright, aren't you?
I love you. I must have you now, today. Parbleu, always.
Oh, Jules.
A clever Frenchman who knew his way about with women. An Englishwoman vacationing in France. Why was she there?
Oh, Jules, if I were a better manager, if we'd be better with the end, well, I'd never have had the breakdown. I'd never have come to France, and I'd never have met you and your wildest threats.
Oh, All such items come to an end someday. And summer comes to an end. At least that's the correct calculation. That's the way Betty calculated, without thinking of her Jules.
Jules,
Oui, ma chérie?
I have to go home.
Oui. Mais je viens. I come also.
Oh, Jules, that's impossible.
Now, there were the usual sighs and protestations, of course. It was just a brief interlude. Betty was a trifle saddened to let it go. After all, when a woman is crowding 40... She went home anyway to Sussex, to the Binnacle Inn, to security of sorts, and to her husband, Al.
Business hasn't been too bad while you were away, Bessie. All the rooms were let this week, and the bar trade was fine.
I dare say you did all right by the bar.
The landlord's got to be social, girl. Otherwise, his customers go somewhere else.
There's a difference, Alf, between social and drunk.
Here, now, none of that. I take a drop now and then, but I don't get drunk. Well, another customer. Business is picking up, and on the hotel side at that.
Oh,
How can I help you, sir?
I have, how you say, one moment, please. I will find the word. Ah, oui, I have come to stay.
What do you know? A froggy. Pleased to have you, monsieur. And may I ask how you found us?
well, that is...
Monsieur Brown, the merveilleuse Madame Brown is the recommendation for your so select hotel. Is it not so that we have met in Provence, Madame?
The little Frenchman must have been mad. Mad with love. Or just a little touched in the head. In any case, he'd come just as he said, to stay. As he explained it to Al Brown.
I am, how you say, an inventor. I have much great ideas.
Yes, sure, Gamma, sure. But do you make any money?
To make money? Je ne comprends pas.
Money, shillings, francs.
Ah, oui, beaucoup d'argent. Oh, right now I wait from Canada. Much money.
And what do you invent to get all this beaucoup money?
The wireless. I am in the wireless, very much interested.
Well, monsieur, if you can get music out of the air, maybe you can get some money out of the same place to pay what you owe us.
Huh?
You've been here a month now, and we haven't seen a shilling on your board bill.
Board bill? Comment?
There was another conversation shortly thereafter on the same subject, if not exactly on the same polite level.
Look, Bessie, he's your friend. We've got to have some money.
How can I ask him for money, even if he is our friend?
Yours, not mine. He doesn't take walks with me every afternoon.
Alf Brown, are you suggesting?
I'm not suggesting, dearie. I'm telling you. Get some money out of him or out he goes. You're supposed to be the business head in this family. All right. Tend to business here.
Well, you never talked to me like this before.
It was the first time for everything, they say. For the first time, Al was in the driver's seat, and he knew it. So did Betty know it. On one of their afternoon walks, she said as much to Jules.
Jules,
Oui, ma chérie?
I suspect
He will do nothing, jamais.
he's after me
Huh?
to get money from you. What are you laughing at? I'm telling you that Alf will be real nasty. And he throw us both out. And you without a penny. Well, it's not funny. He holds the whip hand. Don't you understand?
Oui, one moment.
Oh, Jules. Not that little book again.
Oui, ça fait mon, le petit livre. Ici, I have it. Like an Englishman, so... one may steal his wife, but not owe to him money.
Jules was self-confident, to say the least. He behaved as if he had a plan. He said to Al,
Never fear, mon ami. In a few days, beaucoup d'argent. You like? Oui?
To Betty, he said,
Je t'aime, ma chérie. Do not fear. All will be well.
a quiet, dull New Year's morning. The routine of the inn continued, minus the overtired, oversleeping maid. After a while, the master came grumbling down the stairs.
Bessie! Bessie, where are you?
Ah, me. I think Mr. Gamache is dozed.
Well, let him doze in his room, then.
Pardon, monsieur? Into my chambre you wish for me to go? Oui?
Oh, no need for that. Is there, Al?
Oh, so long as he's awake, I don't care, one way or another. Where's my salt? You know I can't start a day without Miss Salt.
I know, dear. They're where you'd expect them to be, on the mantel shelf, in their regular place.
Oh, yes, I forgot. If I may disturb you, monsieur.
Oh, but of course. The chair before the fire. Very nice, oui? Très charmant. When it is so very cold outside.
Oh, thanks. Bessie, that glass is here. Where's a tablespoon and some water?
Oh, I'll get them for you. Just a moment, dear.
Jules Gamache stood in the bay window and watched the little domestic scene. Occasionally, he riffled through his ever-present dictionary as if for a word to describe the events he was watching. Such inconsequential little events. Betty came trotting back from the kitchen with a tablespoon and a pitcher of water. She put them on the table alongside the salt and glass. Hal measured his own dosage, poured it into the glass. Then he poured in the water. Almost mockingly, he raised his glass as if in a toast. The Frenchman standing nearby. Then down the contents of the glass.
Oh, those salts taste bitter this morning.
Yeah, they are never sweet, no?
Nothing sweet about them.
Then why complain, dear? You had more to drink than usual last night, so the salts taste more bitter than usual.
1 hour later.
Betty, get some help. Oh, it's the cramps. Oh, I can't stand it. It's awful.
Oh, Joe, get a doctor. Call the cook. Do something.
I will try. My English, it is not good, no, but I will try.
Oh, my feet, they itch. Oh, they're driving me crazy. The pain, and the itching. Oh.
Shortly thereafter, Alfie Brown was quite dead. And so the tragedy reached its climax. And playing its little part in that tragedy was a certain dictionary, which, as I've told you, can be seen today in the Black Museum. Dr. Westcott, the local physician, was called at once, but far too late. Alf Brown was past help. The doctor listened gravely to the story as Betty told it to him, while Jules stood by, the very picture of solicitude.
Oh, he went so quick, Doctor, and in such agony, cramps and groans, and he said the strangest thing.
What was that, Mrs. Brown?
Well, he cried out that his feet were itching. It was almost the last thing he said.
Is that right, Mr. Gamache? Oui, monsieur le docteur, vous avez raison.
Huh? Well, if you say so, it's an interesting symptom. Peculiar one, particular poison. Though how this household will come by it, I haven't the slightest idea.
Poison? But, Doctor, it was his salts. Although he did complain that they tasted more bitter than usual.
Anything else, Mrs. Brown?
No, nothing else. Oh, I'm so upset, confused. But what poison? How?
Itching feet, bitter taste, great pain, or they all point to strychnine. But of course we won't be able to know for certain until there's been a post-mortem.
Oh, Doctor,
Why?
Well, I can't sign a certificate under these circumstances. I have to notify the coroner and the police.
Oh.
Now, I think our next precaution is for you to give me the bottle, the spoon, and the glass into my charge. Where are they?
Oh, well, I don't quite... Mr. Gamache, do you remember?
Je ne sais pas, madame. Je ne comprends pas.
Oh, come, Mrs. Brown. Now, pull yourself together. You want to catch the party who poisoned your husband, don't you?
Perhaps there was a better question than Dr. Westcott realized. It was pure rhetoric at that moment, as far as he was concerned. Of course, the widow wanted to catch the murderer. Still took a bit of concentrated prodding of Betty's memory until she said,
I know now, Doctor. I put them in the drawer of the kitchen table when I left Alfie for a moment to fetch some tea and soda. I thought it might help.
They found the bottle and the glass and the spoon in the kitchen table drawer. The doctor looked at them closely.
Someone's washed these thoroughly. There are still traces of water in the bottle and the glass. Mrs. Brown, I'm going to the police at once.
And Dr. Westcott went to the local police. The local police went to Scotland Yard. Betty Brown went to Jules Gamache.
You did it, Jules. I don't know how, but you did it.
Moi? Ma chérie, ma foi, impossible.
You did. You killed Alfie, and you stayed right there and watched him die.
Betty, you are most... how is it? Oui, you are most hysterical. You know I do not kill your Alfie. You must know this.
I know. I feel it in my bones. You killed him. Go away, Jules. Go away. I never want to see you again as long as I live.
Sadly, as if overwhelmed by the unpredictability of women, Jules Gamache packed his things and left the Binnacle Inn. But he didn't go far. Just to the next village and the next inn. There he waited and watched. Waited to hear from his beloved, now widowed, his Betty. Waited for developments in the case which the coroner's jury had labeled death at the hands of person or persons unknown. The developments were not long in coming.
My name is West, Mrs. Brown, Inspector West, Scotland Yard. My credentials.
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, particularly concerning the disposal of the poison.
I'll try to answer them, Inspector.
Do you know who washed out the bottle and glass?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I left them in the kitchen. We were all so upset by poor Alfie's suffering. We were rather hysterical, I'm afraid.
I understand. No idea on that. I see. Tell me, Mrs. Brown, have you ever used any kind of weed killer in the garden of this inn?
No, sir. Not that I know of.
Poison for rodents, rats, mice, and so on?
No, sir. We've never been troubled by such.
Have you any idea who might have wanted to kill your husband, Mrs. Brown?
No, I haven't.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Brown. If I could...
The inspector left the front of the house, so to speak, and visited below stairs. He had a nice talk with the cook over a cup of tea.
Mrs. Davis, did you wash out the salts bottle?
No, why should I? I've got enough work. And that was New Year's Day. The maid didn't come in. I had to clean up, too. Pity, not much of a New Year in this house.
Did you notice the bottle at all?
Well, I remember saying to Mrs. Brown that there wasn't much more than a tablespoon left in it. And perhaps she better order another bottle in case Mr. Brown was getting mad if he had none.
Now, this is important, Mrs. Davis. Can you place anyone at all, in this kitchen between the time Mrs. Brown brought the bottle in here and the time Dr. Westcott took it away?
No one but the Frenchman, sir.
Mr. Gamache.
I seem to remember, sir. I wouldn't want to get him in no trouble unless he deserved it. But he did come in here and jabber at me. And then he used his little book.
Little book?
He's got a dictionary. Looks up the French and finds the English. Right comical he is sometimes.
I see. Then he looked in his dictionary.
And he said bottle. He said something else. I didn't pay much attention. I just pointed at the kitchen drawer.
Did he take the bottle out of the drawer?
I wouldn't know, sir. For all I know, he just wanted to be sure it was in a safe place. I heard him open and close the drawer, that was all. Then he went out.
Did he have a chance to put it back?
Lots
the chances. I was that busy running in and out.
That's too bad. Oh, excellent tea, Mr. Davis.
The inspector was never a man to accept loose ends. He ran all his leads to earth. This is the approach which brought him finally to where Jules Gamache was staying.
Do you accuse me, Inspector?
Merely asking routine questions, Mr. Gamache. Did you have any reason to dislike or resent Mr. Brown?
None. No, but of course not.
Have you ever had any strychnine in your possession?
No, but pourquoi? Why should I?
I can't say, sir. I can only try to fill in the blank spaces. Someone, you see, gave Mr. Brown the opportunity to poison himself. That kind of gift is murder, Mr. Gamache.
Naturellement.
I'm afraid I must ask you to remain in England, sir, until the case is closed.
But for me, this will be a pleasure. I assure you, Inspector, I wish to see vengeance on this murderer. I loved Mr. Brown, almost as a brother.
So there it was, a smooth, blank wall for Scotland Yard to face and search for some crack somewhere. The interest in the case simmered down. Nothing was happening. Then the newspapers picked up a lead, something so fantastic, the men assigned to watch the Binnacle Inn and its neighborhood hardly believed their own ears. It seems that Jules Gamache began to write letters. And to the police.
There is one suspect who had not been questioned. A man long subject to Alfred Brown's whims and tempers. The pot washer at the inn, known to me only as Georges. I point the finger of suspicion. Observe, gentlemen of Scotland Yard, the comings and goings of Monsieur Arthur Brookfield, solicitor to Madame Brown. This man is in and out of her residence at all hours. Certainly not all of this can be on business.
Was jealousy entering the picture now? The letters aroused a good deal of attention once they leaked to the newspapers, as such things have a way of doing. Jules Gamache was quite pleased. When the reporters swarmed about him, the photographers took his picture. Many times, in many poses. This was fame, at last, for an impoverished inventor living on his wits.
Come in, sir. You asked to see me on the Brown case.
Yes, sir. My name is Scott, sir. I'm the owner of a chemist's shop in Woking.
Not too far from the Binnacle Inn, is it?
Just far enough to miss some of the news, but this morning I saw this newspaper.
Ah, yes, our French friend. Do you know him?
He was a customer of mine a few weeks back, just before Christmas.
Go on, Mr. Scott.
He asked for strychnine.
Oh, what excuse did he give?
Oh, something about experiments in the wireless. He kept consulting a small English-French dictionary to express himself.
The wireless, yes, that's the new excuse. Although why they should think the wireless operations entail the use of poisons is beyond me. Did you sell him any?
I did. I made him sign the poison book. The name he used was Hatch.
Mr. Scott, do you think you can identify this man among a dozen others? Well, Mr. Scott?
That's he, sir. The short fellow with the bright black eyes.
Thank you, mister.
Monsieur le chemiste. Bonjour, c'est un plaisir. How you say, one moment, please. Oui, ici. It is a pleasure that we meet again.
Jules Gamache, I have a warrant for your arrest on a charge of willful murder. I must warn you that anything you may say...
Well, that's the story. And today, the dictionary which played its part in that story can be found in its place in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment.
Truly a strange, impassioned little man, that Jules Gamache. He's half crazy, half sane. You wonder about him. And you know, to add to the dilemma of his personality, is one last point. While Jules was awaiting execution, he wrote another letter to Inspector West, stating that shortly after the death of Al Brown, he, Jules, saw a woman. Whether the woman was the cook or his beloved Betty, he didn't know, secrete something behind some loose bricks in the garden wall at the Binnacle Inn. Of course, the police investigated. They found 2 small jugs, one with crystalline strychnine in it, and the other with a solution of the same poison. Now, the question is, did Jules Gamache put those jugs there himself, or did one of the women? And if the latter, why did Gamache wait until just before his death to reveal this? Was it some odd form of gallantry? Well, I guess no one will ever know. And now until next time, till we meet in the same place and I tell you another story about the Black Museum, I remain as always, obediently yours.
This is WDCB-FM, Glen Ellen.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. From the Black Museum. It's a repository of death. A kind of museum. Yes, here in the grim stone structure on the Thames which houses Scotland Yard is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a cigarette lighter, a young girl's diary, a broken perambulator, all are touched by death. There's a woman's glove. That's a familiar object, hand-stitched, soft leather, the gauntlet type, but this glove touched death.
I found something, Inspector.
I see. A glove.
Lady's glove, sir.
Yes. Pigskin. Very nice, too. I wonder now, do you suppose this dainty object fits a killer?
And today, that woman's glove can be found in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum. In just a moment, you will hear The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. Now, The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Here we are, the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Yes, here lies death. Here, for example, is a pen. The ink crusted on its sharp point. This was a poison pen. The words it wrote dripped malice. They were vitriol on human hearts. They cause death as surely as a bullet. Here we are, the glove. Dainty, isn't it, this little glove? It's made for a tender hand, made to grace the costume of a lovely woman. Come to tea. That's when our tale begins. In Matfield, England, in the lovely countryside, at tea time. Or just past tea time. In fact, it was just past tea time that Mrs. Michael called.
Elizabeth! Elizabeth! Yes, ma'am?
Have you seen Miss Mary yet?
No, ma'am.
It's long past tea time. The tea is cold. There's no sense in making fresh until we know if my granddaughter is coming. Hurry now. Use the telephone.
Yes, ma'am. Hello? There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Elizabeth was a good girl. Bit of the slavey type, perhaps, but a good girl. Obediently, she asked the operator for the number of the cottage where Miss Mary lived, with her mother, Dorothy Fredericks, who was Mrs. Michael's daughter, and her housekeeper, Martha Patch.
There's no answer, ma'am.
If it was busy, I'd understand it.
No answer. Well, it's still warm outside. They may be having tea in their garden, forgotten all about me.
Oh, Mum, Miss Mary would never forget her grandmother.
Well, in that case, you'd better run down the road and find out what they're up to. Now, go on now. You can make my tea when you get back. Now, go on. Hurry up. Don't stand there like a ninny. Now, hurry.
Elizabeth did as she was told. She deposited her apron in the hall, left by the back door, and hurried down the road. And here are her reactions as she turned through the high yew hedge into the garden of the Fredericks' cottage.
Oh, Miss Mary. Miss Mary. Why would you be lying on the ground, Miss Mary? Oh, where's your mother? Where's your mother? Where's Miss Dorothy? Oh, Miss Dorothy. Sitting against the stones, Miss Dorothy. Oh, will you be cold, Miss Dorothy? Oh, Martha. Martha. Where's Martha? The house. The doorstep. Oh, Martha. You were bringing out tea. You were serving tea.
With no note of hysteria, however, a short while later, when Inspector Seymour and Sergeant Layton took charge for Scotland Yard.
How far along are we, Sergeant?
Oh, a lot of details, sir. Multiple murder makes a lot of work. 3 women, all shot once. The medical examiner is on his way. The regular crew is working on fingerprints and all the usual, sir.
Very well.
Which one do you suppose went first, Inspector?
I've been thinking about that. Looks as if the youngest was picked off first. Then the mother was caught as she tried to climb the wall we found her against.
Oh, and the servant?
Probably an afterthought. Or no witness, something like that. That would account for the dropped tray and the smashed crockery.
Methodical, careful, clean thinking, just as methodical as the men searching the house, covering the ground inch by inch, missing nothing. After a while, that job was done. The inspector sat at the kitchen table with many pieces of glued-together crockery in front of him.
See what I see, Sergeant?
Oh, just cups and saucers, a teapot, sugar bowl, cream pitcher.
We have 3 bodies, Sergeant, and 4 cups and saucers.
Yes, sir.
It's possible, then, that our murderer came to tea. Any sign of the weapon, Sergeant?
Oh, not a thing, sir. Not even a spent cartridge.
Probably a revolver, then. Well, we'll hear about that after the medical men get through. Anything else?
Yes, sir. I found something, Inspector.
I see. A glove.
Ladies' glove, sir.
Yes. Pigskin. Very nice, too. I wonder now, do you suppose this dainty object fits a killer?
Oh, I've no doubt we'll find out, sir.
And you're a bit more optimistic than I am. One never really knows at this stage. Where do you find this, gauntlet?
In the garden, sir. Between the mother and the daughter.
Very well. Next step's one I dread, Sergeant. Never could stand it, even as a constable. Notification detail in those days. Well, nothing else for it.
Notification detail. So called by the police who are sent to notify relatives that someone is injured or dead. That part was over and done with by now, of course. But its equivalent was upcoming, the business of questioning Mrs. Michael, mother of Dorothy Fredericks, the grandmother of Miss Mary.
You have a job to do, Inspector Seymour. Stop fiddling with your fingers and get it done.
Thank you, Mrs. Michael.
You've a murderer to catch. I want him caught, too.
I admire your courage, Mrs. Michael.
Not courage. I'll cry myself silly as soon as I go to bed. Just angry. What do you want to know, Inspector?
Was your daughter a widow?
Separated. Not divorced. Just separated. About 5 years now.
Any particular reason?
Yes. She was too particular. Expected to hold a man by chaining him. Can't be done. He left her. I've been working on getting them together. For Mary's sake. Waste of time now.
Where's her husband living?
Piddington, Oxfordshire. Has a nice farm. Doing well. Pretty decent chap. But like to look at the girls. If you know what I mean. I told Dorothy, let him look. But no. She wanted blinders on him. So off he went. Now, this.
Did they quarrel ever?
Not since they've been apart. They rather agree to disagree. But no one gets younger. They should have been together again, soon.
Anything else, ma'am?
You want me to do your work for you? Get along with you. You're dying to get on over to Piddington. It's written all over you.
Of course, Inspector Seymour did just that. He traveled to Piddington and stopped at the pub. A pint of ale and conversation with the bartender.
Know anything about a fellow named Fredericks hereabouts?
Yeah, quiet chap. In and out of here occasionally.
Works a farm, I hear.
That he does. Seems to like it out there. Not in town much.
Live alone?
Usual hired hands, usual cook, unusual housekeeper secretary, sort of.
Sir?
Why? You one of those private detectives? Frederick's wife wanting grounds?
No, nothing like that. Matter of fact, Frederick's wife is dead. Just interested.
That housekeeper now. Anybody would be interested. Good looking, auburn hair, tallish.
I see. What road's the farm on? I might drive by just to have a look myself.
Right Fork, about a mile north.
Right Fork, about a mile north. Inspector drove his car in that direction. He knew that Paul Fredericks, the estranged husband, was in Matfield by now with his mother-in-law. This youngish woman, from all descriptions, would be alone in the house. She was, except for the elderly, waspish cook who admitted the inspector.
Miss Jean's laid up. Fell yesterday and bruised herself. Mr. Frederick's gone to Matsfield. What do you want?
My credentials. I'd like to speak to Miss Jean, if you don't mind.
Come in, if you have to.
Inspector Seymour was asked to wait in the front room, and he was permitted upstairs to interview an extremely attractive woman.
I won't stay long, Miss...
Moore, Jean Moore. This is such a nuisance, Inspector. I'm a big girl now. Imagining tripping over my own feet and bruising myself so badly I have to stay in bed.
I'm sorry to hear that. This, of course, is merely routine. My visit, that is.
I understand. How can I help you?
Did you know Mrs. Fredericks?
Of course, and quite well. Her daughter Mary, too. I've often thought Mr. Fredericks a fool to stay away from them.
Did you see them recently?
No, I'm sorry to say that I haven't.
I understand there was a market in town day before yesterday, and Mr. Fredericks spent the whole day there. Is that correct?
Why, yes, that's correct.
And your day before yesterday, Miss Moore?
I was here all day. Cook will tell you. Surely you don't think I had... Why, it was that evening I fell. I remember it distinctly because Mr. Fredericks was so upset about it when he came home from the market.
Thank you, Miss Moore. You'll forgive me if I check up with the cook, won't you? Purely routine, but we find it. Now, ma'am, you do remember her being here all day, then?
I've said so.
Well, is there any incident you recall to fix the day in your mind?
There is one. She was upstairs. She called from the window. Mum, she called. Will you bring a couple of logs in from the fire when you're done with the chickens?
Mum. Is that what she calls you?
Why shouldn't she, seeing as I'm her mother? Well, don't gawk at me. She gets a salary and so do I. We each do a job. Anything wrong in that? Even if Fredericks doesn't know it.
No, nothing wrong.
The inspector was struck by this fact. He filed it for future use. Then, almost as an afterthought, he went back upstairs to the bruised woman's room.
Sorry to bother you again, Miss Moore, but would you mind trying on this glove, just for size?
The glove? Oh, yes, of course. Nice bit of pigskin. It seems a trifle slug and mean. About half a size too small. Whoever owns this must have lovely hands, mustn't she, Inspector?
Back in Matfield, the medical examiner gave both Inspector Seymour and Sergeant Layton plenty to think about.
The mother and daughter were both shot from behind. The housekeeper was struck in the chest. Excellent shooting.
With a revolver, I suppose. No shells about the place.
Not a revolver. The bullets we recovered were small bore from a rifle. My guess is a single-shot, small game gun. The kind where each exploded shell must be removed from the chamber by hand.
Oh, that would explain why there were no shells about, Inspector.
It also explains how Mrs. Fredericks had the time to run as far as the wall before she was hit. It explains a lot of things.
Glad to have been of help, Inspector.
Oh, you have been. It may interest you to know the kind of gun you described. I saw it, leaning against the kitchen wall in a farmhouse in Piddington, just this afternoon.
And the woman's glove, yes, that has its place today in the Black Museum.
In just a moment, we will continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. And now we continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
The theories began to take flesh on their bones, but they were still theories. True, it seemed peculiar that a young woman would bring her mother into her house as cook and not tell the fact to the owner. True, a glove which seemed a perfect fit, well, it might be half a size too small. True, a woman in bed with bruises might have tripped and fallen in the house where she lived. And many thousands of people own single-shot, non-ejector rabbit guns. Together, these items might make a confounding composite, but a good defending counsel could still make mincemeat of them. These were some of Inspector Seymour's thoughts on the subject of his obvious and prime suspect. Then another fact was added. A fact with several possible meanings.
They found a bicycle, Inspector, about a half a mile down the road toward the railway station from the Fredericks cottage.
Whose is it?
It was Mrs. Fredericks' bike, sir.
Any fingerprints?
Only Mrs. Fredericks.
Of course. Well, there's nothing for it, Sergeant. We'll have to canvass the area. Might as well get started.
First stop, the railway station at Matfield. The ticket agent was a blank. The washroom attendant was a blank. The porter was, however, somewhat helpful.
Repeat that for me, will you, please?
I remember her because the parcel she was carrying seemed kind of peculiar for a woman. Long and wrapped in brown paper. She got off at 12:08. Real sporty looking she was, with kind of reddish hair and wearing trousers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Then there was the newsboy.
You're not making this up, are you, son?
So help me, sir, I'm not. Like I said, I was delivering the afternoon paper. I saw this party watching through the edge of the Fredericks place. I kind of thought it was a man on account of the long pants. And then she stood up straight and I saw it was a woman. She had a kind of long package with her. It wasn't none of my business. I stayed on my own side of the road.
And the obliging truck driver.
I heard about this from the porter down at the station, Inspector, so I figured to come in and tell you.
Go ahead.
I picked her up round 4:15. She stood in the road and waved. I pulled up for her. She asked would I take her into town, seeing as she had to catch a train. I gave her the lift.
Did she have a parcel of any kind?
Yes, sir. Sort of long and wrapped in brown paper.
Oh, yes, it's helpful when honest folk have good memories and come forward with what they remember. These memories sent Inspector Seymour back to Piddington, back to the farm.
My daughter isn't here.
Where is she? It's important that I verify certain facts with her at once.
She's gone to London to see a doctor.
I see. What train did she take?
11:15. Why I should be so obliging as to answer you, I can't say.
Could you tell me what she was wearing?
I could, but I won't.
Here, now, this sort of thing gets no one any place.
Why don't you leave her alone?
Has it occurred to you she may have knowledge dangerous to herself and that we want to protect her?
Oh, that's a bit different.
Well, Mrs. Moore?
She was wearing her hunter green suit, brown shoes and brown bag. No hat. Jean doesn't like hats.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore. Now, if I...
The voice on the telephone to the yard traveled much faster than the train to London from Piddington.
I've got it, Inspector. Hunter green suit, brown shoes and bag, tallish, auburn hair, quite striking looking. I'll be at the station myself. The 11:15 from Piddington. Fair enough, sir.
The inspector knew the matter was in safe hands. He left the house, wandered out to the farmyard. There in the large, orderly barn, he found a hired hand.
May I trouble you, sir?
Oh, no trouble. Not yet, anyways.
I'm interested in a few points. You might be able to help a bit.
What, me? Help Scotland Yard?
Well,
That's one, that is.
You may be able to.
Oh, far away, sir. Always interested in police work, like on the wireless.
Yes, I suppose it is interesting, like anything else, when you're not used to it. Oh, now then, do you see much of Miss Moore around here?
Oh, every day, of course. She keeps the egg and milk books. Checks with me every day. Nice woman. Friendly.
Ever known her to go rabbit hunting, anything like that?
Oh, no. But funny you should ask that, sir. She's been interested in shooting lately.
How'd it come about?
Well, I was cleaning my rabbit gun out in the yard. She stopped by. She thought it was a funny-looking shotgun on account of it only had one barrel.
You set her straight.
Well, you bet. Anyway, we got talking. Was it dangerous? Well, I told her it wouldn't kill anybody unless you got real close. What, just a little gun like that? Real close? She asked how it worked, so I showed her. Well, the next thing, she's bought some shells, and she's asking me to teach her to aim and fire.
Did you, Ralph?
Well, I did a bit.
Uh-huh.
But you know how it is. Woman like that and all. You can't teach a body to aim a rifle without putting your arms round her. But I know my place, I do.
Of course you do, Ralph. Anything else about the gun and Miss Moore?
Well, around last Wednesday, she asked to borrow it. Well, I lent it to her. Why not? But then I needed it back, see? Old Rabbit's been getting into the carrots. So I asked her for it. She gave it back and said I'd have to clean it. She'd had it in the rain or something. So I did.
One more question, Ralph. Did you ever see Miss Moore ride a bicycle?
I seen her try about 2 weeks ago, wobbling around on an old one of Mr. Frederick's. She got better, but, well, not near good enough to travel on it.
I see. You've been very helpful, Ralph.
Really?
And you're sure it was last Wednesday she borrowed your gun?
Oh, certain. It was Friday. I had it back.
And on Thursday, 3 women had died at Matfield of gunshot wounds.
I beg pardon. You're Miss Jean Moore?
Why, yes, I am. Why?
My name is Leighton, Scotland Yard. My credentials.
I see.
Inspector Seymour asked me to meet you here. Seems he'd like your assistance on the Fredericks case.
But I told him all I know.
Well, something else has come up, miss, so if you don't mind, we'll just cross the platform and go back on that train. It's not a bad train. Practically an express through to Matsfield.
The train ride to Matfield was made in a rather stony silence. Sergeant Leighton watched his fellow passenger carefully, failed to see what was going on behind the rigid mask into which her lovely face had set. At Matfield, Inspector Seymour was waiting.
Kind of you to come right back, Miss Moore. My car's waiting, just over there.
Silently, she got in. Inspector Seymour carried on an almost solo conversation until they reached the local station house. There.
If you'll wait in there a few moments, Miss Moore, we'll be with you.
Jean Moore found herself in a room with half a dozen other women of about her build and coloring. No one spoke. Unknown to Jean, a panel slid open in an adjoining room.
All right, Porter. Do you recognize any of these women? Yes, sir, I do. Which one?
Second from the left, sir. She's the woman got off the train with that brown parcel, like I told you the other day, sir.
Well, young fella?
I know that one. She just got up and moved over there. That's the lady who was looking through the hedge the other day.
Sure, Inspector? Sure, I'm sure. That's the dame. I'd know her in a million.
Perhaps if she'd been less striking in appearance. Perhaps if she'd used a pistol instead of a long rabbit gun. Perhaps... The inspector and the sergeant faced Jean Moore alone.
I must make some inquiries of you, Miss Moore. And I must warn you, anything you say may be taken down in writing and given in evidence. Oh, did you hear me, Miss Moore? This is no laughing matter.
I won't hang you, no. I'm not right. Never have been. My mother was away for years. Paul was sweet. Not much of a man. Not as much as he thought he was. But sweet. And he had some money. Then they wanted him back. Why should I give him up for a prissy wife and a stupid kid and a harridan of a mother-in-law? This was a nice gun. A nice gun. But I couldn't get the shell out with my gloves on. Oh, you were smart. You found me. You found me. So I lost him. But she didn't get him back, did she? All she got was a bullet in her back. Like a rabbit. She ran like a rabbit. Tried to jump the wall. She fell back. I'm getting out of here. Get away from me. I'm getting out of here.
Hold there, Sergeant. I'll call the matron.
And today, the woman's glove still offers its silent testimony in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment. Now here in person is Orson Welles.
Jean Muir was certified insane. Her own cunning, her craftiness, were not the operations of a normal mind. Her complete breakdown substantiated the testimony of the alienists. She was put away for the rest of her life. And so the case was complete. Each part of the story fitted together as neat and as well-fitting as that dainty pigskin glove. Now, until we meet next time, in the same place, and I tell you another story about the Black Museum, I remain, as always, obediently yours.
The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles, is presented by arrangement with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Radio Attractions. The program is written by Ara Marion, with original music composed and conducted by Sidney Torch. Produced by Harry Allen Towers.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum, a repository of death, a repertorium of violence. Here in a grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a briefcase, a medicine bottle, a carpenter's rule, all are touched by murder. Now, this old-fashioned trunk is a familiar object, brass-bound, well-made in its previous generation kind of way. Perhaps you've one like it in the attic of the storeroom. Perhaps you've traveled with it at one time. Even checked it at the luggage room.
Heavy, this one. A little, I suppose. There you are, sir. Your receipt. We'll watch over your trunk, sir. Nothing to worry about.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
Well, today, that trunk can be found in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Here we are, the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's mausoleum of murder. Not particularly well lit. The vaulted ceiling disappears in shadows, but ghosts like shadows. The vast majority of the people who use the articles exhibited here are ghosts by the verdict of 12 of their fellow countrymen and sentenced by His Majesty's judges with the assistance of the execution. Here lies death. All along the walls, on the tables, even on the floor. Each article feels encrusted with horror, webbed in the memory of homicide. Some for more than a century. Here, on this shelf. Common object, a gasoline can. About a gallon. But the contents were poured over a human body and a match was lighted. Only the man who poured that horrific libation left his fingerprints on the pin. Ah, there we are. There's the trunk. It's easily handled. It's empty now. But once upon a time... Oh, yes, this is the tale. For all intents and purposes, it begins in Charing Cross Station in London, with a porter who noticed someone drop a bit of paper in the hurrying crowd.
Here, Davy. Fella dropped this. I tried to catch him. No luck.
Too bad. He meant to throw this away, though. You'd have had nothing from him for your trouble.
How do you mean he meant to throw it away?
Well, crumpled into a little ball, isn't it? All crinkled like it is.
Yeah, that's true enough. Here, but look at your timestamp. He checked that trunk in with you 10 minutes ago. See?
Yeah, you're right about that. 10 minutes ago.
If the paper had been dropped in a waste can, if the obliging porter hadn't seen it fall, if there'd been no time stamped on it.
What do you do in cases like this, mate?
Well, just wait a bit and then notify the police.
Well, why wait a bit?
Yes, wait a bit. Indeed.
Just to be certain that the fellow who threw the receipt away meant to do it.
And a cautious fellow, that checkroom attendant. After 3 days, I wanted to ask about the trunk. He didn't call the local police station. No, not he. He placed his call to Scotland Yard. Inspector Walsh dropped by to have a look at the trunk.
It is heavy, isn't it? Of course, it might be just books. In it, I mean, Inspector.
Yes, it might be just books.
Ready? Open. Oh, just old newspapers, it looks like. Oh.
Sorry to startle you. A dissected body isn't a very pretty sight when you're not used to it.
Another dramatic incident in the life of Harry Lime unfolds this Thursday evening at 9:30 on KUOW. Orson Welles stars as the adventurous rogue Harry Lime in each exciting episode of the series. For suspense and drama, join us Thursday evenings at 9:30 for The Lives of Harry Lime.
The trunk was removed to Scotland Yard. Its contents, once human, were turned over to the yard pathologist. The remainder of the contents were left in the possession of Inspector Walsh.
We're in for it, Sergeant. Again. Body, unidentified. Trunk, unidentified. Owner, unidentified. Well, at least we have a few items to start with this time, sir. Yes, of course. Some old newspapers, torn, stained, and so on. An old smock, stained in the same way. Some scraps of clothing. And the trunk. Well, where do we begin, sir? Save the papers, have the clothing laundered after the stains have been analyzed, then check the laundry marks. On the trunk itself, write up a description of it. Then start the local police into every second-hand dealer, luggage shop, and pawn shop in London. Someone, somewhere may remember it. After all, it is a trifle large, you know, and it had to be brought to the station. Circulate the description through all the means of transportation. Taxicabs, buses, vans, you know, Sergeant. Routine, we've been through all this before.
Routine. Start with a few scraps of clothing, some poor human flesh, a brass-bound trunk. Cast the nets. See what it catches. Throw out the line, see where they lead. One line led to a second-hand dealer in Brixton.
I remembered it as soon as I saw the write-up, Inspector. Picked it up in an odd lot some time ago.
Good of you to come in, sir. You're certain it's the same trunk you sold?
Yes, sir. Funny about that label, though.
Oh?
Yes, sir. That's a fresh label. The one I saw, and it was old. Dirty.
Ah. F. Matson, St. Leonard's. Let's see now. There's your old label, underneath the new one.
Same address, sir?
Yes, but the old one was spelled correctly. Notice? Leonard's.
Leonards. The new one is Leonard's, Lenards, no O.
Stands to reason the fellow who bought it didn't live in St. Leonard's. He'd know how to spell it if he lived there.
Now, that's probably correct. Remember what he looked like?
The fellow who bought it? Husky, rather. Well-dressed. Very blondish. Straw hair, blue eyes. Almost white eyebrows. I noticed particularly his eyebrows. I knew a girl once with eyebrows like that. Very whitish. Interesting.
Yes, interesting. Description of a man. But the man who killed the woman in the trunk? That was one of many questions. Among them, of course, who was the woman in the trunk?
We've traced the laundry marks on the clothing, Inspector. Family named Hilton in Shepherd's Bush.
Mrs. Hilton came to Scotland Yard.
We're very sorry to have to ask you to do this, Mrs. Hilton, but you may be able to help us.
So this is what a morgue looks like, Inspector.
Yes, more antiseptic than anything else. We'll make this as easy as possible. She's in here.
All right. Yes, I know. I knew her.
All right, Sergeant.
Her name was Brady. She worked for me as a cook, temporarily. Came through an employment agency. I can give you the address.
The net was working. The lines were developing. Police routine, the Scotland Yard thoroughness was beginning to pay off.
The woman's name was not Brady. At the address the employment agency gave me, she was known as Burnside. She's been missing since March the 4th.
More muddy waters? Or another link? A woman with an alias, missing but unreported, inexorably. The wheels grind on, turning up, among other matters, a cooperative cab driver.
You're positive this was the trunk?
Positive, Governor.
Where did you get the call?
In Ravenswood Row it was. That line of old houses they've made offices out of. From the road at Charing Cross Station it was.
Do you remember the man himself?
He had his hat pulled down, sort of. But he was a husky one. I remember thinking he had to be to get that trunk as far as the sidewalk on his own. And his hair, what I could see of it, was lightish. Well, I hope I've been a help, Inspector. If I do remember anything more.
Oh, yes, it was a help. So was the bus conductor who remembered letting the husky blonde man board his bus with his trunk, light and empty at the time, in Brixton, near the second-hand dealers. And piece by piece, the jigsaw puzzle was filling in.
Patience, Sergeant. We know who the dead woman was. We have a description of a man with a trunk. We've traced the trunk from Brixton to Ravenswood Road, and from there to Charing Cross. Now, a house-to-house inquiry in Ravenswood. Be thorough, Sergeant. Very thorough.
And, of course, the good Sergeant King was very thorough.
A clerk on the first floor of number 12, Inspector, noticed the trunk in the hallway on the 5th of March. It was gone on the 6th.
The day the trunk was checked at the station.
Yes, sir. Now, number 12 has 3 floors, a suite of offices on each floor. The second floor's closed up, no name on the door. Third floor has been occupied for some time. I have the name of the rental agent, Inspector.
Yes, Inspector, number 12 is our building. We manage it from the state, that is. Here now. Yes. Number 12, Ravenswood Row. The lessee is F. Lawrence Maxwell. Business, factoring. The red tab on the card, that means pays by mail regularly.
Then you've never seen Mr. Maxwell?
No. One of our outside men showed him the premises. Would you be interested in his home address?
Yes, I would.
According to our records, he lives at 210 Merivale East in Camberwell.
At last, a shadowy figure begins to emerge into the light. F. Lawrence Maxwell, 210 Merivale East, Camberwell. At that address, Inspector Walsh asked,
"Is Mr. Maxwell at home?"
And the landlady answered,
Mr. Maxwell? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. He moved out and left no forwarding address. That was the evening of March the 6th. I remember it distinctly, sir, because he paid the whole month and didn't ask for a refund.
a blank. The end of the line. Not a trace. But don't forget, that brass-bound trunk is today
one of the star exhibits in the Black Museum.
Each Sunday afternoon at 4, KUOW brings drama back to radio with Theater of the Air. Each week...
The net so painstakingly woven, the lines so carefully cast, all led to nothing. A trunk, a dismembered body, a dozen people all trying to help, nothing. Was this going to be one of the mementos in the Black Museum marked Case Unsolved? Inspector Walsh waited. F. Florence Maxwell was somewhere. And living people rarely, if ever, move through life without a trace.
My, you gentlemen came all the way from Camberwell, Norrie.
And we went through a red light or two, I dare say. Didn't we, Sergeant?
We did that, sir.
This letter you telephoned about, ma'am.
Right here, Inspector. Kept it careful. Always try to help the authorities when I can. Yes, sir.
Ah. From the post office.
Do we open it, sir?
I think we do.
Oh, dear. Nothing but a notice. Undelivered telegram.
Yes, to Maxwell, Red Dog Inn, Hammersmith.
Funny. Sending a telegram to himself in Hammersmith?
Oh, that wouldn't be to himself. It would be to his wife. Mr. Maxwell told me once she has a position in Hammersmith.
A wife. Well. Was she still in Hammersmith at the Red Dog Inn? She was. And so was F. Florence Maxwell.
I'll be glad to help in any way I can, Inspector.
Any further details of your movements on March the 6th? To the best of your recollection, that is.
No, I'm sorry. I may have left out a detail or two. It was a sudden decision. I mean, to give up the office. The business fell off to the point where an office was a needless expense. As I rented on a month-to-month basis, well, I just gave it up. I do remember noticing the old trunk in the hallway, though. Quite a museum piece with all the brass trimmings, as I remember it.
No, most cooperative gentlemen, most helpful, is F. Florence Maxwell. He even saw the trunk in the hallway. But on the inspector's next line of questioning, Mr. Maxwell was not quite so helpful.
No, I'm sorry, Inspector. I've never known a woman named Burnside in my life. Nor Brady, for that matter.
Any other name? Beginning with B, perhaps?
Let me see. No, nary one.
Well, you've been very helpful, Mr. Maxwell.
Nothing like the truth to prove innocence, is there?
With that in mind, I wonder if you'd stretch your cooperation a bit further.
Anything I can do.
We have two witnesses who saw the man with the trunk closely enough to attempt identification. Both of them described a man of your coloring. I wonder if you'd let them have a look at you.
Well, I'd rather not be identified by mistake, Inspector.
I understand that.
Isn't it usual to have several men of similar appearance present? I mean, I've seen such things in the cinema.
Of course. In view of your willingness to assist us, we'll be glad to oblige you on that score.
Decent of the inspector, don't you think? Decent of Maxwell, too. They worked well together. And within a few hours, Maxwell stood in a line of 5 men, all of them approximately his build and blondness. Maxwell was second from the left. The taxi driver entered the room.
I'm none too certain, Inspector. My man had his hat pulled down. If it were any of these, I'd say he was the middle one, sir.
Then the second-hand dealer entered the room.
I wouldn't want to make trouble for the wrong man, Inspector.
Of course not. Now look him over carefully now.
I'd say, yes, the fellow on the extreme right.
Thank you. Sorry to have taken you from your business this time of day. And thank you, gentlemen.
Will you want me for anything else, Inspector?
Thank you, no, Mr. Maxwell, not for the present.
Another blank. Nothing. No one to place F. Florence Maxwell anywhere near that trunk. or its contents beyond the casual contact he himself admitted. Mr. Maxwell went back to Hammersmith. Inspector Walsh went back to work.
Sergeant, I want that trunk cleaned out thoroughly now. Piece those torn newspapers together. Have the smock the head was wrapped in given to the laboratory for every possible test. There's got to be something somewhere.
Nothing out of the ordinary in the newspapers, Inspector. But the physical test laboratory reports that under ultraviolet light, the smock shows lettering that was printed on the material but washed out with constant laundering.
And that lettering, Sergeant?
Red Dog Inn, Hammersmith.
Now, Sergeant, all we have to do is to connect that Brady Burnside woman with number 12 Ravenswood Row, second floor. Let's go, Sergeant. I've had a search warrant ready for a week.
Now they went to work on 12 Ravenswood Road, second floor. In earnest. Board by board, the flooring was taken out, the old-fashioned tin ceilings taken down. The desks and chairs were taken apart, paneling was removed, and plaster walls sounded. Samples of dust were analyzed. Powerful vacuum cleaners sucked every bit of lint from the upholstery and draperies. And when it was all over,
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Unless this hairpin is something, sir.
Oh, that could be anyone's. Proves nothing. Is there an ashtray around here anywhere, Sergeant?
Yes, under the desk, sir, there's a wastebasket. Metal one. Maxwell doesn't smoke.
Yes, I remember that. Oh, well. Hello. Give me a tweezer, Sergeant.
Yes, sir. You found something, sir?
Interesting. Maxwell doesn't smoke. So we find an unused match caught in the corner of his wastebasket, with a red-brown stain on one end of it.
yes, of course it was blood. And the same type as the victims. But the fact remained, as the inspector put it.
A clever defense counsel could make a hash of the case. Millions of people right in London have this blood type, and we still haven't established any contact whatsoever between Maxwell and the woman.
A jigsaw puzzle. All of it save the key piece. Inspector Walsh made a decision the next morning, quite early, in Hammersmith.
All right, Mr. Maxwell. I'm sorry to disturb you this early.
You, Sergeant.
Yes, sir. There have been developments. We need you at the yard.
Developments? What kind?
Sorry, sir. I've not been told. Now, if you'll get dressed and come along, sir, I have a car waiting. It's early, I know, sir, but we don't keep regular hours at the yard.
They don't keep hours, but they kept Maxwell waiting in the quiet anteroom outside Inspector Walsh's office. For an hour and a half, Maxwell cooled his heels while detectives passed him by, went into and came out of the inspector's office. At long last, Sergeant King came to the door.
All right, Mr. Maxwell. The inspector will see you now.
And about time, I'd say.
Good morning, Mr. Maxwell. Sorry to have kept you waiting after rousing you so early. All right, Sergeant, you can leave us together.
Yes, sir.
Sit down, Mr. Maxwell.
Yes, so without further ado, I'd like some explanation about all this. You said you were through with me.
We were, but there have been developments, new clues, all that sort of thing.
No?
We thought you'd be interested. Oh, excuse me a moment, won't you? Yes?
You pushed the buzzer, Inspector. I asked the desk man to ring through.
Yes, sir. I'll be right up. At once, sir. Superintendent Bivens wants you, Mr. Maxwell. I won't be long. Don't try to get out through that window. The view is good, but there's a 60-foot drop to the river. Be back in a bit.
I must say, Inspector, this is all rather...
Time ticked away, marked by the clock on the office wall. And F. Florence Maxwell was alone. Alone with 1,000 unanswered questions. And his own fears.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Walking up and down, back and forth like some kind of caged beast. He can't know anything. He couldn't get me identified. Have they tied me to Louise? How could they? I destroyed every one of her letters. I never wrote to her. She thought she had me. She got what was coming to her. Right in the office. She dared to come to the office. Did they find anything in the office?
In the office, Mr. Maxwell? Yes. They found a hairpin and a matchstick with blood on it. But you don't know that, do you? You haven't been told. What could they find in the office?
When I took her to pieces,
They did it in the trunk. They can't have anything. Yeah, there must be something. Well, there's got to be the inspector in Scotland Yard holding me here. I deny everything. It'll look bad. Very bad. Oh, I've been here. Where's the clock? Yes, almost a half hour. I'll have a story. That's it. I'll have a story. I'll be ready for it. I'll have a story.
Now you've done it, Mr. Maxwell. So you have a story, will you? You better be good, Mr. Maxwell. It had better be good.
Well, Mr. Maxwell, I'm back.
Inspector!
Yes?
I want to tell you, sir, I've been holding back. I knew Mrs. Burnside.
I see. You knew her?
Yes, quite well. How doesn't matter. She tried to blackmail me, you see. She came to my office. When I refused to pay her 1 shilling, she flew at me. I hit her and, well, she fell.
Where did you hit her?
The left side of her face. She fell and struck her head. When I bent over her, she was dead. So I left her there. I came back. I must have been crazy expecting a dead woman to get up and walk. I was scared, you see. I bought the trunk. Well, you know the rest.
Very well, Mr. Maxwell. You're taken in charge for murder. I must warn you, anything you say may be taken down in writing and used as evidence.
But it was an accident, not murder.
Sorry, Mr. Maxwell, but the medical evidence belies your story. Mrs. Burnside died of strangulation. You didn't hit her. You choked her to death.
So, that winds up the case of Mr. Maxwell. But if you're interested, you'll still find the brass-bound trunk in the place of honor in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment.
In the end, it was just routine, wasn't it? Methodical, hard-working routine based on experience, and plus just the touch of imagination a good policeman must always have. The trap was sprung in Wadsworth Prison, and the story ended 3 weeks later in the usual manner at the customary time. 8 o'clock in the morning with the customary payment to the hangman. And the trunk remains in its customary place within Scotland Yard, the Black Museum. And I remain, as always, obediently yours.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a woman's purse, a man's glove, a child's shoe, all are touched by murder. Now, this silencer was made to fit an army rifle, made for a killer, for striking unseen and unheard. In the dark, perhaps. Interesting little instrument, a scientific gadget to absorb sound, to change a sharp, cracking report into a muffled gasp.
I suppose I'm being rather subjective about this, Sergeant, but I find myself hating that silencer.
Yes, I understand how you feel, Inspector. A silencer, well, it's filthy, isn't it? It's something like a rattlesnake.
No, Sergeant, your simile's wrong. A rattlesnake gives warning before he strikes. He plays fair.
Today, that silencer can be seen here in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death. the Black Museum. In just a moment, you will hear The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. Now, The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Well, here we are, in the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Here lies death, violent death, in many guises, the long history of a great number of very murderous deeds. On the shelves, on the tables, in the very air itself. Now, this elephant gun here, this was once used for hunting by a sportsman bred in the very best traditions. Later used to shoot a friend in the back. Ah, here we are, a silencer. Metal tubes within tubes, small and stubby, designed to swallow sound. There was a weapon, too, of course, but no one thought of a weapon or of a silencer the night Herbert and Josie Martin returned from a party to their new home in the equally new residential development in the suburbs of London.
Oh, it was a fine party, Josie, but I don't mind telling you I'm dead for sleep.
Oh, yes. Oh, I like the new neighbors, but business days are no time for housewarming.
At the rate these new houses are renting, we'll be going to house parties for weeks on end. Might as well make up our minds to it.
A man and his wife, tired in a pleasant sort of way, pleased at meeting their new neighbors and preparing for sleep. Normal, quiet, nice people in a new home. Nothing spectacular. No hint of headlines. No thought of death.
Sure the doors are locked, Herbert?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Oh, dear, please pull down the blind, because if it blows up during the night, it'll flap out the window and wake us, like last night.
Oh, all right. If you didn't insist on opening the windows from the top, Josie, the blinds wouldn't blow.
Herbert! Herbert, what is it? Herbert, what is it? What's taken you? Oh! Oh!
A man reaches up to pull down a window blind. The lighted lamp is behind him. A bullet stars the window pane. The man is dead. A short while later, a telephone rings in an office in Scotland Yard.
Inspector Foster here.
Sergeant Williams speaking, sir. There's a call come through from Hempstead Oval. Herbert Martin shot as he was pulling down the blind in his bedroom.
Anyone with him?
Yeah, his wife, sir.
Any other witnesses?
No, sir, not at the moment.
Very well, Williams. Bring a car round and we'll have a look at the situation. I realize this has been a terrible shock, Mrs. Martin, but we need your help at once.
Oh, anything, Inspector. Anything at all.
Did your husband have any enemies that you know of?
Oh, no, no one. No one.
Any trouble in his business?
No, nothing, no.
What was his business?
Insurance. Accident, mostly. It was going on so well, that's how we could afford to move out here.
Then you've only come here recently.
3 months ago. We were one of the first tenants. It seemed such a nice place. Everything so new and...
Questions and more questions. But there was obviously nothing Mrs. Martin could tell the inspector. All she knew was what she'd seen. One point puzzled him. The inspector came back to it several times.
And you're certain, Mrs. Martin, that you heard no shot?
No, nothing. Just the sort of noise of the glass, and then Herbert forward.
Well, it's possible, sir. At extreme range, the sound of the shot might have followed the arrival of the bullet.
Mrs. Martin?
No, I'm sure. I'd have noticed. That's what made it seem so strange. There wasn't any sound. Just the hole in the window and my husband sort of crumpling up and falling.
Well, that's not much to go on. Perhaps the bullet will tell us something. Meanwhile, we'll do our best, Mrs. Martin. We'll try to do our best.
There was very little for the police to start on. A close scrutiny of Herbert Martin's life brought nothing to light. Martin's manner of living, the conduct of his business were exemplary. His friends, his business associates, his new neighbors, all had nothing but praise for Herbert Martin. Death had come out of the dark. This alone was ground for speculation, particularly among the neighbors. Sidney and Elizabeth Davis, brother and sister, were no exceptions.
I can't help but think, Sidney, it's so peaceful here. And that poor man barely in his grave. Well, it is pleasant. Or it would be if it... Only... Oh, do you suppose his poor wife will keep the house now?
I doubt it. But perhaps if you offered to help her, Elizabeth.
Well, I have. It'll take her quite a while to make up her mind.
I see.
But she's all alone, poor soul. Sidney, I can't help but wonder... You know...
What? What is it, Elizabeth?
I had the strangest twinges.
What?
It's Shabbos. Oh, Sidney.
Elizabeth.
Oh, help me. Help me.
Elizabeth.
Death had come to Hampstead Oval once again.
And you're absolutely sure you heard no shot, Mr. Davis?
Absolutely, Inspector. One moment my sister was speaking to me about Mrs. Martin. The next moment she was dying in my arms. There was no sound, and only the blood.
I see. Mr. Davis, do you know the people who live in this development?
Nearly all of them. We felt rather like pioneers, I suppose, with the development being so new. We all became friendly.
And perhaps you can tell me, are there any ex-servicemen living here?
Yes, there are two. Nice chaps. Wives and children, you know. May I ask why you inquire?
Because the bullet which killed Mr. Martin came from an Arnie-issue rifle, and I suspect the same thing will be found true in your sister's case. If it is true, we'll have that much at least to go on.
More, the markings on both bullets were identical. The same weapon had been used. Inspector Foster sent Detective Sergeant Williams visiting.
Yes? Are you Thomas Larkin?
I am.
Excuse me, sir. I'm Detective Sergeant Williams, CID. Here are my credentials.
Oh, come in, Sergeant. Will you come into the living room?
I'll only keep you a moment, Mr. Larkin. I want to speak about the Martin and Davis murders.
Yes, of course.
Do you happen to have a rifle in your possession, sir?
No, I gave all that up when I was discharged. If I never see a weapon again, it'll be too soon.
I believe your husband is an ex-serviceman, Mrs. Goodson.
Yes, he is. 5 years of service, 8th Army, under General Montgomery.
I see. Now, tell me, did he by any chance retain any weapon when he left the service?
No.
Is there any weapon in your house that you know of?
Yes.
Oh.
A Webley.
Oh, really?
Well, frankly, my husband insists we keep it. He's got a license for it, but it frightens me half to death just to have it in the house. What with the children around and all. Oh, Sergeant, are all of us in danger here?
Oh, you needn't worry.
Don't you have any idea who or what may be behind these dreadful shootings?
Nothing, sir. I drew a complete blank.
I rather thought you would. Incidentally, pathology found the Davis bullet and ballistics reports it's identical with the one they recovered from Martin's body.
Well, whoever he is, he's a fabulous shot, sir.
And he uses a silencer. That's the only explanation I have for the absence of sound.
Not very much to go on.
Inspector Foster here.
This is Mrs. Thomas Larkin, Inspector.
My husband and I live on Hempstead Oval.
Yes, Mrs. Larkin, I know. What can I do for you?
Well, Mr. Larkin and I have called a meeting at our house for this evening. We hoped you and Sergeant Williams could be with us.
What's the purpose of your meeting, ma'am?
Oh, the entire development is living in fear, Inspector. We want to try to find some way to protect ourselves. We thought you might have some advice to offer.
I'm somewhat doubtful about the advice, Mrs. Larkin, but Sergeant Williams and I will be at your meeting. Have you set a time for it as yet?
They came that evening to the Larkin living room. Inspector Foster waited in the hallway with the Larkins.
Is everyone here, Mr. Larkin?
I think so, sir.
Mr. Munden said he'd be over. His wife wanted to stay with their little boy.
Well, he's the only one missing, then.
Yes, that's right.
How did you reach these people? By telephone?
It's not much trouble to do that. We're all on party lines.
I see.
Someone's at the back door, Tom.
Must be Munden. I'll get it.
If you'd excuse me, Mrs. Larkin.
Yes, of course. Go ahead, Inspector.
Funny, coming to the back door. I told his wife particularly about the front door and the precautions.
No matter. At least I don't believe it will matter.
Here we are. Hello, Munden. Glad you could make it.
Sorry I'm late, Larkin. I rather thought the back way would present less opportunity for this unknown marksman to...
Munden, good grief.
Shut that door, Larkin. You're a perfect target yourself standing there.
Today, that silencer can be seen here in the Black Museum.
In just a moment, we will continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. And now we continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Neighbor Munden was dead, the rifle bullet neatly placed in the back of his head. The silent marksman was another story entirely. Who he was, where he was, why he struck, were the unanswered questions which Inspector Foster had to face as he stood before the terror-stricken residents of Hempstead Oval.
All I can say is that the police are doing anything and everything to find this killer.
And in the meantime, Inspector?
I'll answer that. In the meantime, we can all be picked off as my sister was, or Martin, or Munden.
Yes, he's right, Inspector. I, for one, won't leave my children open to the risk of being orphaned or worse.
No. Oh, no.
Moving away, giving up your homes, won't find a murderer. I'm asking you, all of you, to do something quite difficult under present circumstances. I want you to stay here for another few days. Be patient. Remain indoors at night. Stay away from doors and windows. If it's possible to find him, and that is always possible, we'll do it. I promise you this, that the entire machinery of the London...
They watched him, the good neighbors of Hempstead Oval, with doubt and fear in their eyes. What they did as Inspector Foster asked. They stayed in their homes and waited. The welcome light of morning found the inspector and his sergeant with Tom Larkin in the kitchen of his home.
You're about the same height as Munden, aren't you, Larkin?
Just about.
Good. Sergeant?
Yes, sir?
Set up the transit here where Munden was standing when he was hit and adjust its height to Mr. Larkin.
Very good, sir.
A surveyor's transit in my kitchen? I don't understand, Inspector.
You will shortly. Almost ready, Sergeant?
Yes.
The men worked quickly, methodically. The transit was set up, the lens of its telescope facing the open back door. Inspector Foster adjusted the eyepiece and then slowly scanned from lintel to lintel through the open doorway. Back he moved the instrument, adjusting it vertically as well as horizontally, turning the brass thumb screw carefully, precisely. stepped away from the transit.
That seems to be the best possibility, Sergeant. See for yourself.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it lines up well. The angle seems to be about right.
Shall we have a look at it?
Yes.
Care to come with us, Larkin?
Yes, I would.
There's a tree out there with a clear line of fire right through your back door. The distance seems to be about 500 yards.
So that's what the transit was for.
Exactly. Let's go, shall we? Too bad it's been so dry lately. There might have been footprints.
Marks on the tree trunk, sir.
Where?
Here. Look, notice the scraping on this bark, sir. As if someone in heavy boots had climbed the tree, and it's recent, too.
Yeah, for a boost up, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. All right. That's it, sir. Hey, there are more marks up here, sir. Quite a comfortable perch. Hello, the limb forks here. Scratches on the bark. Could have been a rifle rested here.
Very good. Come on down, Sergeant.
Right.
Inspector, I may have found something over here, under this branch.
Don't touch anything, Larkin.
Right here, look, in the weeds. Looks like a rifle cartridge to me. Brass. The sun caught it.
Good man. Good eyesight. Take care of that, Sergeant.
All right, sir.
Once we find the rifle and its owner, that bit of brass may well send him up 13 steps early one morning.
Starting from nothing, the facts were coming together one by one. In the quiet office at the yard.
The boot marks on the tree trunk, Sergeant. They were rather close to the ground. I noticed your first jump was at least 2 feet higher.
Yes, I wasn't carrying a rifle, sir.
No, but a man of average weight in good condition would have made markings closer to yours. I'd say this fellow was either very heavy or not exactly young. Or past middle age, at least.
The beginnings of a description.
Either military or hunting experience to be able to shoot like that at night.
The beginnings of a background.
Whoever it was must have lived in that area for some time to know the position of that tree in relation to Larkin's back door. Start a quiet house-to-house check, Williams.
Very good, sir.
Have the men watch for anyone who fits these points.
Yes, sir.
Then find me a detailed ordnance map of Hempstead Oval. The builder or the renting agent will have one. We found one sniper's perch. I'm curious about the other. Interesting layout architecturally. According to the contour of the land. The main line of the houses seems to curve round this rise just off center.
It must have been quite a place in the old days.
Oh?
The builder told me. An estate sold for taxes. Family named, Wardman. Old line. The grant went back nearly to the first Queen Elizabeth.
History. Fascinating. Any more?
Yes, quite a talkative fellow. Seems the land was sold on condition that the sole survivor of the family be given a house rent-free for the rest of his life.
And this person is still there?
Seems to be. He's an elderly gentleman. Keeps very much to himself. This is his house here, on the end of the main line.
I see. Now then, this would be the Martin place, and this the Davis.
Yes, that's right, sir.
The Martin bedroom and the Davis porch face the same way along that curve of the hill.
Yes, that's it, sir. It seems they didn't originally intend to build on the hill, but they've started a new house right here. The fellow sketched it in for me. The demand's been very high. Wouldn't mind living there myself.
After we get this killer, eh, Sergeant?
Oh, yes, sir, after.
Pass me that ruler, William.
Right.
Thank you. See here, Williams. The Martin window and the Davis porch are in direct, clear line with the new building. I wonder now. I assume the contractor isn't working his men at night. I wonder now.
This is the top floor, Inspector. Hardwood isn't in yet, but that floor will take your weight. That's the dormer window you asked about.
Look around, will you, Sergeant?
Very good, sir.
About the progress of this building.
Yes, sir.
How long has this top floor been in this half-finished state?
About a fortnight, sir. Glaziers are due end of this week. Carpenters will get the flooring right after that.
Anyone here at night?
Yes, there's a watchman for the old development. One of his stations is just across the road. You can see it through the window. There.
I see.
I have them, sir. Here. They were lying along the wall, under the window.
Now, who'll do this? tenpenny nails in the windowsill. Someone will catch it for this.
No doubt someone will. Someone put those nails in to help steady a rifle. The same someone who left those 2 brass cartridge cases behind him.
How do you catch a killer who strikes silently in the darkness? How do you match his craftiness? Perhaps you say to Tom Larkin,
"It may be dangerous, Larkin. Will you cooperate?"
Oh, I've been under fire before now, Inspector.
Very well. Now then, I believe someone told me the telephones hereabouts are on party line.
a telephone call is made on the party line.
I want to talk to you, Goodson, about this killer. I think I know who it is. I'll walk over in half hour with a friend of mine, and I'm picking up Sid Davis on the way.
No mention, of course, that the friend is Sergeant Williams, CID, who will walk alongside Tom Larkin, staying between him and the new house on the hill. No mention of the inspector crouched on the hillside in the dark shadow of the half-built house.
So, you're certain the men know the orders, Mason?
Yes, sir. Let anyone into the cordon, but no one gets out, except the watchman.
Very good. Now, let's see. Yes, time Williams and Larkin were starting on the walk. Let me have the glasses, Mason.
Through the night glasses, the inspector watched. Almost half a mile away, two men left the Larkin house, started slowly along the road. On the hillside, a shadow slipped quietly toward the half-finished house. The inspector whispered.
Hear that? Not a sound now.
Unsuspecting, a shadow moved through the line of police, past the hidden inspector, into the building.
Come along, Mason. He's gone into the house.
Into the empty building. Empty, except for a killer, climbing steadily. No lights. Only the vague outline of the unpainted banister and the clean smell of new wood. Suddenly, the footsteps ahead stop. The inspector and his companion pause at the head of the stairway. The glassless window shows the night sky bright with stars. A black shadow kneels at the sill, places a long, heavy object between the two tenpenny nails.
All right, Mason, take him.
No. They shan't take me. No, I have a right here. Better than anyone. I have a right.
You're being taken in charge for murder. I must warn you that anything you say may be taken down in writing.
Never mind, Mason. He doesn't understand.
Yes, sir.
You're Philip Waldman, aren't you?
Who are you? You seem to be a gentleman.
My name's Foster. Why are you here in this empty building, Mr. Wardman?
I have a right. This is my land. My family's land. They told me when I sold it for the money I could go on living here. I build houses, brought strangers. I'm driving them out. I'm hunting them out, as I hunted in Africa. And you were a boy. That's my right. I came to live on my land. Trespassers, there's a law.
There's a law, too, Mr. Wardman, about rifles like this. And silencers.
Silencers. I'm a good shot, eh? Pick them off like quail. And with a silencer, supposed to spoil the accuracy of a rifle. But not mine. I'm good. Won trophies when I was younger. I never knew. I never knew.
All right, mister, take him downstairs. You were an excellent shot, Mr. Wardman, even with a silencer.
And today that silencer can be seen in its place here in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment. here in person is Orson Welles.
It's true, of course, that in many countries, men have loved their land to the point of desperation. Philip Wardman loved his to the point of madness and murder. The rifle belonged to his grandson, a veteran living far away in Canada. Where the old man bought the silencer was never learned. The secret of that went with Philip Wardman to the place where his bitter, lonely life drew to its close. The silencer itself remains in its usual place in the Black Museum. Now, until we meet next time, I'll tell you another story about the Black Museum. I remain, as always, obediently yours. This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a flower pot, a coffee cup, a curtain rod, all are touched by murder. Here's a shilling. This is a familiar object, a shilling. It's a coin of the realm. So much silver alloyed with harder metals for purposes of wear, milled edged, engraved with the face of a British sovereign. Very familiar object indeed.
It's a lucky piece, all right, Inspector.
Lucky for you, Bart.
That's just what I mean, sir.
Shillings don't buy much these days. But this one bought plenty.
Now, The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Well, here we are, in the Black Museum, Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Now, here's a small radio. Made for entertainment, for obtaining all the sounds that reach out through the ether for your ear. Think for joy, for pleasure, but note the little wires protruding here, connected to the switch that turned this little sound box on. A man turned that knob, as was his habit. The little extra wires conducted current to an explosive. The man died. Later, he was followed to death by his murderer. Oh, yes, here we are. Here's the shilling, subject of our story. It's untarnished still, it's gleaming silver. Without a doubt, it passed through many hands, reposed in pockets and purses. And then one day, a telephone rings. So many things are heralded by that sound. This one rings in an office in the yard. Two men interrupt a desultory conversation. One of them picks up the instrument.
Inspector Graves' office. For you, Inspector.
Thank you, Sergeant.
The inspector listens briefly, acknowledges the message, hangs up the telephone.
Well.
Trouble, sir?
Not yet. Just an interesting bit of information. Remember Joey Bart?
Dartmoor, isn't he?
Not after tonight.
Oh, is it that long since we sent him away?
Time off for good behavior. He gets out in the morning.
Wonder if Brother Davy knows.
The same idea crossed my mind. How do you suppose it feels, Sergeant, to know your brother is getting out when you've taken over his business, bar, band, and bottle club, and your brother believes you framed him into Dartmoor?
There's a word for it, sir. Uncomfortable.
That, of course, is an understatement, particularly when it's well known both to the underworld of London and to the police that Brother Joey has sworn to get Brother Davy as soon as such action is possible. Now, obviously, no self-respecting police force appreciates murder. Follows, then, that certain precautions must be taken.
Sergeant, will you arrange for a 24-hour detail to stay with Brother Joey from the moment he leaves the hospitality of Dartmoor tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
And advise the station house, which covers Brother Davy's rather disreputable club, that Davy is expecting company.
Yes, sir.
I'd rather like to be there, you know, when Joey tells his brother he wants the club back, and his share of the earnings of these past 6 years.
Yes, it must have been quite a meeting. Took place, of course. No question about that. In fact, no attempt was made to prevent it. The police knew when it happened. They knew exactly when Joey Bart walked past the uniformed doorman into the nightclub in question. They so reported to Inspector Graves. It was some 45 minutes later that his telephone rang once more.
Inspector Graves' office.
Detective Smythe here. The inspector available?
Just a moment. Smythe, Inspector. He's on the Bart matter. I'll take it. Yes, Smythe?
I'm in Davy Bart's office at the club, Inspector. He's dead.
Where's Joey?
Gone, sir. We saw him go in. We didn't see him get out.
No, a self-respecting police force does not appreciate murder. When the murder is committed while policemen are on watch outside the scene of the crime, it is appreciated even less, if possible. Therefore, action is required.
General alarm for Joey Bart. Description is available.
Yes, sir.
Close that club and hold the customers and staff until I get there. Let's go, Sergeant.
All the resources of a great police department spring to life. And soon the inspector and Sergeant Maxwell are at the scene, viewing the body of Davy Bart with a hole in its chest.
Yes, that's Bart, all right. All right, Smythe. Let's have it.
Well, that's just the way we found him, sir. Sprawled like that. Gun near him. Nothing's been touched except to check for fingerprints.
Pictures been taken?
Yes, sir.
Coroner been here?
Yes, sir.
All right, take him away. Sergeant.
Very good, sir.
Prints on the gun?
Only the dead man's. Just the one set. They're his.
Medical report?
Shot at close range. Powder burns. It's a .38 automatic.
I can see that. Anything else?
Well, there's a wall safe. It was searched.
What's this?
It's a shilling, sir.
What's it doing here?
It was lying there on the desk when we got in, sir. The lights were on, and it was shining in the lamp.
Quite clear, wasn't it? A killing. An ex-convict disappeared, open and shut, simple. Still, the evidence must be collected with a view toward the eventual trial.
You're George Lyons.
Yes, sir?
You have a record.
Well, I went away once. 3 months. Attempted robbery.
Since then?
I worked for Mr. Bart.
Doing what?
Oh, sort of his, assistant.
Yes, I know what you mean. All right. What happened here tonight?
Well, Joey came here, and the boss told me to let him in. Joey told the boss he needed money. The boss said he didn't have any. They started to argue. That was when the boss told me to wait outside, and I did.
Hear anything?
Oh, the place is soundproof, Inspector. Didn't hear a thing.
Why did you come back inside?
I took a chance. Seemed like an awful long time when Joey didn't come out. I found him. The boss, I mean.
What do you know about this?
Hey, that's the boss's lucky piece. When Joey asked for money, the boss took it out of his pocket and told him it was all the money he had on him. That's when Joey said, I ought to kill you for that. Only your life ain't worth a shilling.
Build a case. Interview the employees. First the doorman.
Well, I was kind of surprised, Inspector, but Mr. Bart said let Joey in the club when he showed up.
Why?
Well, everybody knows, sir. Joey thought Mr. Bart framed him to get the club away from him.
So you let him in?
So I lets him in.
See him leave?
No, sir. He must have gone out the back way, through that door. It leads out to the kitchen and the dressing rooms. There's a rear exit, sir, out in the alley behind.
Now it's the turn of the kitchen help. The man in the best position to notice anything is the second cook.
Yes, sir. That's my position, opposite the door.
Did you see anyone go by tonight?
Only waiters. And the girl in the show.
The girl in the show?
Yes, she has a dressing room in the hall. She sings.
Her name?
Miss Fair. Mitzi Fair.
Get the girl, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
You at your station all evening?
The chef, he called me over to taste his dressing. Only once. All the rest of the time, I...
Yes, then you must have missed anyone who went through the hall during that time.
Well, it was only a minute or two.
That would be enough. All right, leave a name and address for the constable on duty.
The henchman, Lyons, saw and heard nothing. The doorman was too far away. The kitchen help were too busy. Still, everyone seemed to have known that Joey Bart was there that night. Everyone, including the girl in the show.
You sing in the floor show, Miss Fair, is that it?
Well, I am the show, you might say. Or was.
Yes, was. The club is closed. You'll need another job.
Thanks for the 2 weeks' notice.
We can do without that. What do you mean, I am the show?
Well, I sing, with a piano, when the band rests. There's no line, no comics. This place is too small.
I see. What's your background, Miss Fair?
It was the usual shabby story, the early ambitions, the voice that failed to make the big time, the small jobs to make a living, and the eternal hope for the break. Then the steady work in the club.
Any particular reason why Dave Bart kept you here so long?
If you mean what I think you mean, there was nothing like that.
Did you know his brother?
Well, only to hear Davy talk about him. I came here after Davy took over.
Your dressing room is out there, off the hall.
If you can call a 6x8 rat trap a dressing room, yes.
See any stranger tonight?
Not tonight.
Other nights?
Maybe. Maybe not. And if I had, I'd know better than to talk, Inspector. Davy operated within the law, as far as I know. But I've been around, Inspector, and if I knew anything, chances are my life wouldn't be worth that shilling.
You ever see it before?
Looks like any other to me.
I'm told it was Davy Bart's lucky piece.
Was it? Well, I wouldn't know. With me, a shilling's a shilling, and they don't come my way easy.
Now, today, the shilling can be found in the Black Museum.
In just a moment, we will continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Inspector Graves waited in his office at Scotland Yard for the report he knew was inevitable, that Joey Bart had been run to earth. This was routine. Meanwhile, he sifted facts with Sergeant Maxwell.
Nothing to it, Inspector. It's Joey. It couldn't be anyone else.
Say that in court, and a smart lawyer will prove it could have been any one of a dozen people. Reasonable doubt, that's all.
But Joey said he'd get his brother once he got out.
That's not evidence, and you know it, Sergeant.
There's plenty of evidence of the gun, for instance.
Davy's gun, registered with only Davy's prints on it.
The doorman saw him go in. Lyons was there at the beginning of the fight. The open safe.
With nothing stolen. At least plenty of money in it, and Joey came for money.
He left by the back way.
Well, no one saw him. If no one saw him go out, they could have missed someone else coming in. Our case is full of holes, Sergeant. It's not the kind I want to go into.
You see, it's one thing to be certain in your own mind that someone committed murder. It's another thing to prove it in court, where your facts are subject to attack by lawyers, subject to the workings of 12 minds in the jury box, subject to the judge's interpretation of reasonable doubt. The inspector knew this. The telephone again. Perhaps this time.
Graves speaking.
Smythe here, Inspector. We've found Bart. He's holed up in a tenement in the East End, 409 Allison. One of those places cut up into one-room flatlets. He's in the 3rd floor rear.
Set the cordon, Smythe. Seal the place. Don't go in until I get there.
The quarry run to earth, his hole sealed, front and rear, by the cordon of police. The inspector arrives.
All under control, Smythe?
Yes, sir. He won't get out the back way this time.
Good enough. Let's go in.
A small, tight group gathers around the inspector. Smith, Maxwell, several uniformed constables. All are armed. They enter the ramshackle building, start up the rickety stairway. Somehow this place escaped the holocaust of Hitler's bomb. It's old, dirty, dangerous. The landings are illuminated by fitful light from flickering yellow electric bulbs in fixtures that once held gas burners. At the third landing, the group stops, splits up. Each man takes his station, one to each side of the doorway. The officer with a gun in position to shoot off the lock on the scaly door. The inspector with Sergeant Maxwell and Detective Smith facing the doorway.
Here it goes.
Who is it?
You know who it is, Bart. Police, open up.
Come in, gentlemen, come in.
Check him over, Sergeant.
Yes, sir. No, nothing on him, Inspector. No weapon.
Very well.
I could have told you that. No guns for me, Inspector. Glad you got here first, though. I thought maybe it was some of Davy's boys with the same idea you have. But I didn't kill him. Not much sense killing the goose with the golden eggs, is there, Inspector?
They took him to the yard. Held for questioning, the record said. The questioning was sharp and to the point.
What did you get from your brother?
£100 to start.
That was all?
Oh, he argued first, but I got good and sore. Told him his life wasn't worth the shilling he threw at me.
We know about that.
Yeah, Georgia Lyons was still there. After that, Dave threw him out. Then I told Dave I could prove he'd framed me. He acted like he believed me. Told me I'd be a fool to take the club back after the way he'd built it up. Said he'd cut me in for plenty. He went to the wall safe, took out £100 and gave it to me as a down payment, sort of. Of course I took it. I took his shilling, too. Told him he'd get his luck back when I figured he was going to be a regular on the payoff.
You took his shilling?
Yeah, here. That's it. He had it since he was a kid. See that nick in it? He got that putting it on a railroad truck so as the train could run over it.
Sergeant, bring Lyons and the fair girl down here.
Yes, sir.
You see anybody in that back hall, Bart?
Nobody. Dave said to go out that way, and I did. I wanted a little privacy, you see. Your boys were with me all the way to the club from Dartmoor.
Did you hear anything in that hall?
Only the pans in the kitchen. Now look, Inspector, I didn't kill him. Why should I? He was paying off. Nobody kills a guy who pays.
Maybe. Maybe not. Outside, Bart, and wait there. I'll see you again later.
An accommodating ex-convict, to say the least, and willing to talk his head off. The inspector was puzzled. This was not part of the usual pattern. The puzzle seemed deeper when Mitzi Fair told him.
That shilling? No, that's not Davy's. Davy's was the one on the desk. I watched him play with it lots of times.
You're certain of that?
I'm sure. Positive.
And the puzzle seemed deeper still when George Lyons said.
Yeah, I remember now. That nick in the shilling. Hey, Inspector, if Joey had this shilling with him, who put the other one on the desk?
Know something, Lyons? The answer to that question could be very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
A whole new avenue of inquiry suddenly opened up. Suddenly became possible that Joey Bart had not been the last person to see his brother alive.
It's a matter of who is telling the truth about those coins, Sergeant. If Lyons and Bart are, then the girl is lying. If the girl is honest, then Lyons and Bart are both lying.
Well, how do we find out, Inspector?
We take our time. And we let Joey go, for the time being. With a continuous watch on him, of course. Arrange for it, will you, Sergeant? I want a little quiet. I've got some thinking to do.
The inspector had his peace and quiet briefly. Shortly thereafter, he adjourned to the Padlock nightclub with Sergeant Maxwell and Detective Smith.
Nice of him to provide wall-to-wall carpeting. I hate tearing up floorboards.
Well, it helps the soundproofing. How are you coming along with the walls, Smith?
Nothing hollow. Soundproof tiling under all the draperies.
Hello, here's something. Back of the couch, Inspector.
Bobby pin, blonde.
The singer's a blonde?
Too bad she's not the only blonde in London. If she were, we'd have to prove she dropped it after Joey left this office.
Nothing doing on the walls, Inspector. Next?
The desk. Take it apart if necessary.
Yes, sir.
Dave Bart looked too honest, Sergeant. There's a reason for soundproof offices. And if there's any record of that reason, it'll be here, someplace.
Well, the girl said something about visitors, backdoor visitors.
I know she did.
Hello. Do you hear something? False bottom to this drawer. It measures 6 inches deep on the outside and only 4.5 on the inside.
Sliding panel?
Probably. Sounds hollow enough. Here it is. The bottom slides back when you press this nail head. A couple of letters here. The record book.
Good work, Smith. Well, Mr. Bart was methodical. Record of payments to the witnesses who swore his brother into prison. Income from various enterprises. Letters. Well.
Enough there on the girl to keep her working for free the rest of her life.
To say the least.
Then it's the girl, Inspector.
Or Joey. Or both. Or neither.
Lyons?
There's a great deal on him, too. His 90-day sentence seems to have covered up a small item which could have meant 10 years. Apparently, several people were interested in the sudden death of Mr. Dave Bart. Shut the drawer, Smith. Leave everything as it was, except for the papers. We'll take those. And as we leave, Sergeant, suppose you forget to snap the lock on the front door. Understand, Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
It was neat and simple. The bait, of course, was the contents of the drawer. 3 people were interested in what it contained. Given an open padlock, the opportunity to search, the magnet, which was the letters and records in that desk, should draw at least one person back to the room where someone had killed Dave Bart and left a shilling on the desk. The inspector waited. With him, Sergeant Maxwell and Detective Smith, and a dozen assorted detectives and constables. They waited in the silent, darkened nightclub behind the door with its open padlock. They waited in the dark hallway near the kitchen, among the piled-up tables and chairs in the main room. They waited in the echoing, empty club. Waited for the sounds they knew would come. Sounds which did come when the safety of night shrouded the street outside.
The door, Inspector.
I heard it, Sergeant.
Crouched in the darkness, they heard the footsteps. Light, tentative. Then bolder, more confident, as eyes became accustomed to the gloom. A moment later...
Another one, sir.
Shh. Quiet, Sergeant. The first intruder was aware of the second. More quickly now, the footsteps came into the main room of the club, crossed the dance floor. Suddenly, the second person broke into a run, caught up to the first.
Thought you'd come back, eh? Tried to pin it on me, did you, with the second shilling? You listened outside the door, didn't you? Ducked when I came through.
Let me go.
All right, Smith, the lights.
What's all this?
All right, Bart. Miss Fair, we'll take over now.
Smart coppers, eh? Sitting in the dark, waiting, eh?
Take him over, Sergeant. Take him over.
Yes, I told you once, Inspector, no guns from me. She's got one, though, in her bag. Tried to sock me with it.
Well, Miss Fair, why did you plant that second shilling?
I knew George was in there. When Joe made this crack about the shilling. I went in after Joe had left. I wanted my letters. David made me miserable enough with them, and we argued, and he tried to threaten me with his gun. I grabbed for it, and it went off. I thought if there was a shilling, you'd think it was Joey.
Yeah, a woman. Every time it's a woman.
Never mind, Bart. You can tell that to your friend. Miss Fair, you're taken in charge. And the charge is murder.
And today, the shilling, which was the main clue in this case, can be seen in an honored position in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment. here in person is Orson Welles.
There was no premeditation, that was clear. And certainly there was provocation. Mitzi Fair went away, convicted of manslaughter. Joey Bart eventually reopened the club, which had been his property in the first place. Seems to be going straight. Only time and the careful eye of the Metropolitan Police will know about that. Meanwhile, the shilling, contributed by Joey Bart, remains in its customary place in Scotland Yard, in the Black Museum. Until next time, if we meet in the same place for another story about the Black Museum, I remain, as always, obediently yours.
The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles, is presented by arrangement with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Radio Attractions. The program is written by Ara Marion, with original music composed and conducted by Sidney Torch. Produced by Harry Allen Towers.
This RadioVault.com program is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a light bulb, a broken mirror, a stained blotting pad, all are touched by murder. Here's an auto service card, issued by a garage to show that a certain motor car was oiled and greased when the speedometer reading was 15,001.
According to the card, his car had done 5,001 miles on the first. By the following day, he'd added another 160 miles to the speedometer reading.
And he told you, Inspector, he hadn't been on any long journeys.
He'd forgotten the speedometer reading on the service card. They all overlooked something.
And the harmless-looking service card, which George Dalton overlooked, was instrumental in convicting him of the brutal murder of his own mother and father. That's why it's earned its place here in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Museum. As beyond these stone walls, the life of London flows as ceaselessly as the muddy waters of Thames. Here, it's silent. Let us walk under the frieze of death masks, the masks of criminals of bygone days, suspended grimly under the ceiling. That glass funnel means nothing until we stop and read the card beside it. Once this funnel was used to pour acid over the body of a woman. Insignificant in itself, easily broken, but was strong enough to hang a murderer.
And here's a pair of spectacles. Over there's a powder puff. And here's what we're after, the buff-colored service card. As I open the showcase and take it between my fingers, I ask you to come with me back to 1947. We're calling at the quiet suburban house of Mr. and Mrs. Dalton. Live in South London. It's a respectable district populated by respectable middle-class people, but the Daltons are in trouble. The cause is their only son, George Frederick. They are discovering that George is not as other young men of his age. To his parents, he is, at the age of 23, a problem child.
He's not a bad boy, Fred, you know that. But he just doesn't seem to settle down.
I know his trouble.
Oh, don't be too harsh on him.
He won't work. That's what's wrong with the young devil.
Oh, Fred.
Well, how many jobs has he had since he came out of the army?
I don't know.
So many you lose count. And even the army couldn't do anything with him. Absent without leave half a dozen times. He spent more time in detention than he did on the drill square.
Shh. Here he is. Oh, dear, he's upset again.
Now I expect you'll turn the radio on. Oh, George, for heaven's sake, don't turn that radio on. I've got a headache.
Oh, go to hell.
What did you say to me?
I told you to... Here, you get away from that set.
Jerry, you put your hands on me. Go to your room.
But I'm sure...
Protect me.
I'm sorry, Dad.
I'm sure he didn't
Go to
mean
your
it.
room.
I didn't mean it, Dad.
I'll sweep up this mess and we'll have some tea, shall we?
All right, young man. For your mother's sake, I'll forget it. But I'm getting straight on the telephone to my old friend Jim Spencer. He's got a jeweler's shop in Clapham and he meets a lot of people. Maybe he can advise me about fixing you up with a job.
Jim Spencer, the jeweler, was white-haired in his 60s. He lived over his shop, which was quietly prosperous, and he had just lost a young assistant who, having learned something of the trade, had transferred to a larger firm. So George Dalton was taken on in his place, and for the first time, George seemed to be interested in his work. But perhaps that was not altogether surprising.
Pass me my eyeglass, will you, my boy? Here you are. Thank you. That's a very nice pendant you're working on, Mr. Spencer.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
How much is it worth?
I'd give 100 guineas for it, then sell it at 120.
Would the owner sell?
Not this one. But I always keep a few £100 in the safe there, just in case I get a chance to buy something like this. Now, where did I put those tweezers?
To Mrs. Dalton's delight, her son was still working in the shop at the end of 6 months. But young George was rather less interested in the work than in the end product. And above all, he was interested in that safe. He even had a duplicate of the key made. He had a duplicate of the door key, too. Perhaps he didn't quite know what he was going to do with his keys, but in a steamy cafe behind the bright lights of Piccadilly, he found a friend who had ideas.
If you ask me, chum, I'd say you were sitting on a blinking gold mine.
What do you mean?
Yeah, come off it, George. We did 90 days detention together in the army, didn't we?
Yeah?
I know you're not quite daft. I mean, all you got to do is to get the key of the door, the key of the safe, and...
Well, I've got those.
Well, you have.
There they are.
Well, for crying out loud, what are you stalling about?
Well, I've never pulled off a real job, Charlie. It's a bit of a step to take, isn't it?
It's up to you, cook. I know what I'd do. I'd slip in about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Here, Charlie. Would you come with me?
Why? Do you want to make it a business proposition?
Yes, I do. Look, if we broke in together...
Shh, quiet. Pay the bill. Let's get out of here.
Okay. Here, where do we go?
I'm taking her down to the Elephant and Castle. Meet Slash. We work as a team. He's the boss. It's the only safe way. Slash has got brains. He'll put you right. Come on, I'll introduce you.
So George Dalton started his professional career.
You know this gone well to you, Charlie?
I'll say we did 90 days together, didn't we, George?
Yes, that's right. Okay. And you want to join us, do you, George? I want Charlie to come in on this job with me. That's the idea. The idea's okay. And we need a jewellery expert in the gang. Forget this, pal. I'm the boss. And what I say goes. Do this job, you and Charlie, and take 50% of the profits. The rest goes into the organisation. Understand? Do you agree to the terms? Yes. Yes, I agree. Then that's fixed. Shake on it. This clinches it. And remember, there's no funny business in this outfit. I suppose you know why the boys call me Slash.
I think so.
I carry a razor. Remember that, George? Not that I'd use it on you, but I thought I'd mention it in passing.
George is okay, I've told you.
Of course he's okay, and I'll fix up a car for you tomorrow night.
A car?
Yes, it's all part of the service. You're busting into the Spencer shop tomorrow night. So you've got all day tomorrow to fix the burglar alarms.
And those burglar alarms took quite a bit of fixing. But by closing time, George Dalton had traced and snipped the wires. Putting on his coat, he wished his employer a dutiful good night, and at 11 o'clock, Mr. Spencer turned out his light in the bedroom upstairs and climbed into bed. 3 hours later, a stolen car turned quietly into the deserted street and stopped.
The coast's clear, George. You got the keys?
You bet.
Okay, then in we go. Right. Where's the safe?
Over here.
Oh, okay, get to work. The old man's upstairs, isn't he?
Yes.
Heaven help the old fool if he wakes up and comes down. You got that safe open yet?
No, the lock's a bit stiff. Here, Charles.
Yeah?
Shine the torch this way.
Go on, what's it? Jumping Jakes, what the blazes are you doing?
I'm sorry I knocked a tray over. The clock made me jump. Here, let's get out, quick.
Open that safe, you stupid swab.
It's jammed, Charlie.
Yeah, come on, let me have a go. You sure this is the right key?
Of course I'm sure. Here, look, Spencer will be awake now. We must get out.
You idiotic clot, this isn't the right key.
Yes, it is. And the lock's open. Pull the door.
Look out, the old man's coming. Here he is.
Who's there?
Get him.
Jeez! Get back!
Grab what you can and run for it.
Okay. I've got 2 trays of rings and some notes. Come on, let's get out.
The jeweler was found, lying in a pool of blood. 10 minutes later. The neighbor who found him called the police immediately, but needless to say, there were no signs of the thieves, and they had left no clues. And Mrs. Dalton stated that her son had been at home in bed on the night of the robbery. To the best of her knowledge, she was telling the truth. But 2 days later, her son visited his unfortunate employer and handed in his notice.
You see, Mr. Spencer, I just couldn't go on drawing me wages while the shop's closed and you're here in hospital. You're a good boy, George. I only wish you knew enough about the business to carry it on for me, but I thought it wiser to put the stock away in the bank in case those rascals came back. I only wish I could get my hands on them, the dirty swine. Well, luckily they didn't get away with anything worthwhile.
What do you mean? I thought that you...
What did you think, George?
I thought they'd cleaned you out.
No, I'm too old a bird to leave valuables in the shop safe at night. I take 'em all upstairs to a real safe. I only leave the paste stuff down below. Didn't I ever tell you?
No, you never told me.
How much the old gentleman suspected, we don't know. If he did have any suspicions, he never had them. But Slasher was not so easy.
George Dalton, the expert in jewelry. Come here, George. I want to speak to you.
What's the trouble, Slash?
I'll tell you what's the trouble. You dirty double-crossing perisher. Think you can unload junk on me, do you? You knew these rings were duff.
I didn't know.
After working in the shop for 6 months, you didn't know where the real stuff was? Don't give me that. 2 trays of duff and a fiver in notes. You can't get away with it. Where's the rest?
There isn't any more.
Okay. I warned you. Here it comes.
Put the razor!
The slash of the razor across Dalton's left cheek unlocked the gates of an unquenchable hatred. With the flash of 6 inches of sharp steel, he became a killer, and he knew that the slasher must die. He would evolve the perfect murder with no clues, such as the service card which can be seen today among the exhibits in the Black Museum. We return to Dalton, the killer.
with blood still streaming from his cheek. He smiles at the slasher. And for the first time in his life, that individual is surprised, taken off his guard.
I suppose I asked for that.
Get out of here. You're not pretty.
I've got your brand on me now. I've got to be one of you.
What do you mean?
You're a man of action. I like that, even if it hurts. Give me another chance. I'll do better next time.
I never knew they made them so yellow. Get out. You stink. I've got a date here with a smasher and you might scare her away. Now scram. Ah, here she comes.
Oh, Henry, is that you?
Right here, Toots.
I never knew your name was Henry.
Get.
Oh, hello, what's happened?
Oh, he's had an accident. Just going.
Hello there.
Are you hurt bad?
No, it's just nothing much.
He's no friend of mine, Brenda. Come on, let's go.
Okay.
Good night, Henry. Good night, Brenda. I'm going to say some more of you.
That's right, Dalton. You've made your choice. You're going to start with a girl. That will hurt him. Follow them. They go into a cafe. Have a meal. You wait in the shadows. They're coming out at last. Follow them again. Into a mean little street. Oh, yes, this must be where she lives.
You're going to let me in, aren't you, Toots?
No, I'm tired.
What's the matter with you tonight?
I don't know what you did to that fellow.
Oh, for Pete's sake, you're not still beefing about him.
I know what you did, and I'm no prude, but I don't like razors, and you know it. Good night.
No, look here, wait a minute. Okay, if that's the way you want it. See you tomorrow.
He's gone. Suppose we knock on her door. Yes, knock on her door. See what happens. Cheeks still bleeding.
No, I told you to...
It's me.
What do you want?
Have you got something I can put on this cut?
You followed us?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I need help.
Oh, if he comes back, he'll kill you. Here, come in quick. I don't know why I'm doing this. I must be crazy. Here, come into the kitchen. I'll bathe that cat.
Well, I'd better go. I'm a nuisance.
Oh, you can't go now. Come over to the sink. Well, if the cops saw you in this mess, they'd take you for questioning. Here, hold your face over the water.
Righto.
What's your name?
George. George Dalton.
Henry says you double-crossed him.
I didn't.
It would be so easy to squeeze that pretty throat of yours, Brenda. But you're too lovely. Much
There.
too lovely.
Now, keep still while I put some plaster on. It's lucky the cut isn't deep.
Huh?
How'd you feel?
Oh, fine, thanks.
Oh.
I suppose I'd better go now.
I don't understand you, George. You know, you're different from the others.
What others?
I suppose you know what sort of girl I am.
I don't care what sort of girl you are, but I sure like you.
Well, you're decent. Perhaps you should go.
I'll do just whatever you say.
Oh, your shirt and coat are all covered in blood. I can't turn you out like that. You better spend the night, and I'll get you some clean clothes in the morning.
Brenda, I never felt like this about anyone before. I don't know what to say.
Funny. I don't either. Well, I'll put the kettle on and we'll have a nice cup of tea.
Tea. As much a part of London's life as Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament. Brenda made tea. The next morning she went out and bought her new lover the clothes he needed. He put on the clothes she'd bought him and went home. He knew quite well what he was going to do, and that night he borrowed his father's car, and at 9 o'clock he drove to the bomb site, where he knew the slasher would be waiting for Brenda. And in his pocket he had a short length of lead piping. As he approached his objective, he saw a movement in the shadows. It was the slasher.
Well, if it isn't the jewel expert.
Yeah. You come into money?
Hello, Slash. How you doing?
Well, what's the idea? Not looking for trouble, are you?
What do you think? Get back, you dope! Now, that squares out a count. Now, I'll put you under the rug in the back of the car and I'll take you for a little ride.
The little ride was to a deserted bridge over a railway. Dalton lifted his victim onto the parapet. Then he paused.
Just before you go, I wonder how much you've got in your pocket. Anybody coming? Good. Oh, yes. Quite a few notes here. Thank you, Slash. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And quite gently, Dalton eased the unconscious man over the edge. After that, it was easy. Brenda, like the old jeweler, may have had her suspicions, but she kept them to herself. Dalton had money, taken nearly 100 pounds from the Slasher's pocket before pushing him into the path of the oncoming train. That 100 pounds lasted just 2 weeks. 2 glorious weeks. The happy couple celebrated those weeks in the famous seaside resort of Brighton. Then, on the morning of January the 1st, 1948, with funds running low, George Dalton took his father's car into the Carduck service station to be oiled and greased. Now, why did he do that? Superintendent Brandruth of Scotland Yard has the answer.
There is no doubt that Dalton had already decided to drive to his parents' home and ask for money. He had insufficient funds with which to pay his hotel bill, and it was essential for him to receive help from his father. His father was always particular about the regular servicing of his car, and the son doubtless had this carried out in order to produce it as a sop for his father's wrath.
And the speedometer reading was 15,001, duly recorded on the service card. So George Dalton drove the 50-odd miles to his home on what was to be his fatal journey. He was hampered by fog on the way, and when he eventually turned into his own street, the fog was very thick. Stopped the car outside his parents' house, went inside, and got down to business.
I'm sorry, Father, but I've got to have the money quick.
Well, who the blazes do you think you're talking to? You take my car for a weekend, you keep it for a fortnight?
Well, I've had it serviced.
I don't care if you've had it rebuilt. You'll never drive it again. Billy nearly got onto the police and reported it stolen by you. And now you have the infernal impudence to demand £50, just like that.
If I don't have it, I'll go to prison. The hotel won't
Then you'll have to go to prison. You should have gone there a long time ago. It might have brought you to your senses. You're my own son, but I'm disgusted with you. Go on, get out.
You can't send me away.
Can't I? There's the door now. Now, go on, get out.
Oh, no, you don't.
Take your hands off me, you young rascal. Your mother.
Give me that money, will you?
You're mad. You're choking me.
George, what have you done?
He's dead.
Stop that noise, you!
Dalton, apparently unimpressed by the enormity of his crime, left the murdered couple lying where they had fallen while he searched the house for money. He found just over 30 pounds of his parents' savings. He drove the car into the garage, put his victims in the back, and covered them once again with a traveling rug. Then, as he cleaned the house and locked up after himself, as darkness fell, he drove to the nearest bridge over a railway. It was the same method as before. And when it was over, the murderer drove back to his lover in Brighton. But when he arrived, she had grim news for him.
George, tell me you didn't do it.
What? What are you talking about?
Your mum and dad.
Ah, you're mad. You don't know what you're saying.
Come into the other room, quickly.
Brenda, what do you know about my mother and father? Now, tell me.
So you did do it?
No.
I know you did it. Oh, why? How could you?
Brenda.
And don't touch me.
Mr. Dalton, is it?
Yeah? What do you want?
I'm sorry to have to tell you that your mother and father were found dead an hour ago.
I didn't do it.
What exactly do you mean by that?
How dreadful. I don't believe it.
You know how they died?
Of course I don't. How could I?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Could you give me an account of your movements today?
Yeah. I spent the day here with my fiancée.
You haven't used the car outside?
Oh, we drove to New Haven.
That's 8 3/4 miles. 17 and a half there and back. You haven't been anywhere else?
No.
The car's been here all the time?
Yes.
According to the garage people, you had the car serviced this morning.
Yeah?
The speedometer reading then, according to the service card, was 15,001. You've put on over 100 miles since then. I've just checked the clock on my way in.
The girl knows I've been with her all day.
Oh, George, what's the good of you lying?
The speedometer's in order. That can't lie. I'm afraid that in the circumstances, it's my duty to charge you with the murder of... Stop him!
Let me go!
So George Dalton was arrested and charged with the murder of his parents within an hour of their bodies being discovered on a railway line 50 miles away. In due course, he was convicted, and at 8 o'clock on a cold, misty morning, he mounted the steps of the scaffold.
And he told you, Inspector, he hadn't been on a long journey.
He'd forgotten the speedometer reading on the service card. They all overlook something.
And that is why the service card has earned its place here in the Black Museum. You may be wondering how George Dalton was traced so quickly. When his parents' bodies were discovered, the police immediately went to the Dalton residence, expecting to find the son. Both the son and the car were, of course, missing. It was the work of a few minutes to trace the make and number of the vehicle, and a general alert was put out all over the country. Police officers visited garages, and the telltale service card localized the search to the Brighton area, where Dalton's name was recognized in the hotel. The girlfriend was questioned while George Dalton was already being tailed by a police car into the hotel forecourt. At this stage, of course, there was no evidence against him, but the police allowed him to get into the hotel before questioning him. So they proved the theory that by giving a criminal just enough rope, he'll surely hang himself, which is what Dalton did, with the aid of the buff-colored service card, which has earned its honored place here in the Black Museum. Now, until we meet next time in this same place, and I tell you another story about the Black Museum, I remain, as always, obediently yours.